Welcome to Fear No Evil, where the evil I speak about is child sexual abuse, where Psalms 23 is my foundational scripture, and where the Lord is my shepherd at all times. Speaking about child sexual abuse because it's very evil, the door has opened to be able to speak about certain abuses, and so it is important for those who have any information or any insight or maybe even just a different perspective need to be out speaking the truth, their truth. And that's the thing about child sexual abuse. There's not one person who can really tell another survivor what their truth is. Now, I came across a book called Breaking Down the Wall of Silence by Alice Miller. It was translated by Simon Worrell. I think she lived in Germany. I'm not quite sure. She does speak about a time in the 90s where she wasn't able to find someone to actually publish her information or her own insights on child sexual abuse except for a paper in Germany. So I found it very interesting how she wrote a book called Down Breaking the Wall of Silence, because child sexual abuse is a crime of silence. However, the wall that she spoke about is not the wall that survivors themselves may erect, but the wall that society itself erects to protect themselves. I'm not quite sure what society is protecting itself from. I'm going to assume that we have some major players in our society who engage in sexual trafficking and the sexual abuse of children, and that is what society is trying to protect itself from. Now we know that child sexual abuse survivors, well, I know that sexual abuse survivors have three defense mechanisms that come into play when they're being sexually abused as children. They are denial, they are dissociation, they are repression. However, Alice Miller also says that society erects its own wall of silence, and it has three pillars as well: resistance, prejudice, and indifference. Now, I find it interesting, especially with the story now, The Horror House, how, and also I would also have to say Elizabeth Smart's story. The main message I got out of all of it was how Christians sexually abused their children. See, society doesn't like to have new knowledge to old situations. And in fact, history shows that it has actually literally silenced people who come out with a different perspective if it's not going along with what society wants you to believe. However, any knowledge that you may gain doesn't kill you. It only liberates you. And for every sexual abuse survivor, their main goal in life is to find freedom. And the only way they're going to find freedom is with truth. And the only way they're going to find truth is to go back to their own past and find the truth for themselves. And as many sexual abuse survivors as there are, each one has their own story and they come to their own truth. The principles of the truth may be the same, but how it applies in their life is going to be different because every person is unique and different. You never have two people who are exactly alike, not even twins who have the same genetic makeup. People are different. Therefore, it is important for each survivor to let go of the archaic ways of thinking, although society wants to say that Christians have an archaic way of thinking. Society has an archaic way of thinking when it comes to child sexual abuse. And constantly, you see the resistance, the prejudice, and the indifference when it comes to child sexual abuse. And unfortunately, most survivors are in an environment where they must rely on people who strive against their own truth. And the only way you ever possibly become free is usually to break away from everybody and to deal with your own trauma as you see fit, as long as you're not violating the rights of somebody else or causing harm or injury to somebody else. And you have to come to your own truth. Because, as Alice Miller stated, the capacity of the human organism to bear pain is for our own protection, but it's also limited. So the same defenses that a child sexual abuse victim may use as a child becomes very dysfunctional when they become an adult. And the only way they are able to shed those defense mechanisms are actually to go back to their own truth. Now, Alice Miller on page 24 states, just got to find page 24. I thought she stated this very well. That child sexual abuse survivors seek help when they are no longer compelled to betray their own feelings and senses. They no longer allow themselves to be deflected from the truth of facts by ideologies of any kind. They are always ready to lend a hand in the demolition of the inhuman, destructive wall of silence, the wall that we were forced to respect as children, and which has again and again resulted in fascist behavior, which is producing right now, actually. Fascism makes possible every kind of crime because one person, the dictator, arrogates to himself the right to destroy life without being accountable in any way. He decides what is worthy of life and destroys whatever does not conform to his definition. Now, society right now wants to say that you are born homosexual. And if you don't conform to that definition, they will take down your videos, they will hide your videos, you'll get kicked off Facebook, they will not allow people to comment on your videos. They will take off your comments. So that behavior to me is fascism. When you say, and I don't even know who's the first person, who's the dictator, who has arrogated it to himself the right to destroy other survivors because they do not believe that people who are homosexual are born that way, but rather may be the manifestation of early, very early, child sexual abuse. Who decided to write this law that's not even on the books, but we are all supposed to be sheep, shepherded into a pen, and we're supposed to obey and listen everything that they say when it comes to the connection? Well, if it goes against the truth of a survivor, they need to seek truth. And there's one thing that I have found when talking with the LGBT on an individual basis. If you're courageous enough to bring up child sexual abuse, the person who is a victim or who is a survivor, they eventually cannot betray their own feelings. They will either say that they are a survivor, or you get a whole bunch of name calling telling you how stupid you are and never answer the question of whether they are a sexual abuse survivor. Well, even in that silence says to me, you are a sexual abuse survivor. You just don't want to admit it. And why do we not want to admit we're child sexual abuse survivors? Because of the environment society has created and their archaic ways of thinking. The frame that they tried to put sexual abuse in, which is so archaic and so prejudicial that it's just ridiculous. And I can't believe that in 2018, people still believe what the mainstream media puts out about child sexual abuse. Their view is distorted, telling a half truth. Therefore, if you tell a half truth, it is no truth. I'm tired of society lying. I'm tired of the LGBT lying. I'm tired of our politicians lying. I'm tired of Hollywood lying. Because sexual abuse does a whole lot of damage to a whole lot of people. And our indifference to it is disgusting. And our resistance to tell the truth and to be able to discover all the manifestations of child sexual abuse is disgusting as well. Because we're supposed to be progressive. But if we cannot progress in this area, we are not progressive. We regress. And right now, all the gains that survivors have made in this area of child sexual abuse is going backwards. Thanks to our politicians, thanks to Hollywood, thanks to Oprah, thanks to people who are just lying instead of telling the truth about child sexual abuse.